Yeah, I was up at the World Hunt with John, and a good friend of mine, Ken Waters, he had a black and tan dog named Pleasant Hill Rock, an outstanding dog. And he and Joe House had drawn out together, and I'm not sure what Joe was running. It may have been Cruz, or I'm not sure. But Kenny came back in, and I walked over and I said, Ken, did you win? He said, nope. And I said, Joe win? He said, nope. He said, there was a dog out of Tennessee, a little old half-starved to death looking dog. It just absolutely wore us out. He said, that thing would drop out of them cornfield races, man, and tree coon like popping popcorn. So I said, what was that dog's name? And he said, I think they called him Speck. And I went over and looked on the board, and he was owned by a guy named Houston Carter down in Tennessee. And he'd come in that night with a real high score. In fact, he may have been the high dog that night. I'm not sure about that. But I thought, well, I'm going to keep my eye on this dog. So the next day when they called out the cast, and he failed to come to the post. And I walked out there, and Houston wasn't running the dog. He had a handler on him. And the handler was laying in the back end of the truck, and he had been hitting the bottle, I guess. He was passed out. And so he failed to show, and when he woke up, he took the dog on home. So I said, I'm going to buy that dog. I'm going to get after that guy, and I'll get that dog. And so I stayed the rest of the week. Like I say, I was still running. And a friend of mine from Kentucky, Russell Wagers, he rounded up Houston Carter. And to be honest, Houston was in prison, and he wasn't even running the dog. But Russell managed to buy that dog. And Russell had Hard Time Speck, and he owned House's Lipper, both down there at the same time. That's a pretty good starting lineup there for one man to have. But my friend Calvin Hayes, he had a Walker female that Russell wanted real bad to breed the Lipper. And he called Calvin trying to buy her, and they worked out a trade of some type for Speck. And at that time, he was a registered Walker dog, but a bad-looking Walker dog with all the ticks on him. So Calvin, he transferred Speck, and I think his original name was Tennessee Speck. And Calvin, he played in a band down there called the Hard Time Band, and so he put the Hard Time on him. He named him Hard Time Speck. And Calvin, I know he won the English World Championship with him, and he won Walker Days, and he won Kentucky State Hunt. And we were up at the World Hunt, and Calvin had taken his Jake dog, which was a good hound, and Speck both up there, and he come over talking to me, and he was just ready to hang it all up. And he said, I brought us two as good a dogs as there is here at the Hunt Ed, and can't even win a cast. And he said, I'm going to get rid of what I've got, get rid of all my dogs. Well, I had just sold the Hopsing, the Fuller's Hopsing dog. I had him up there and had Paul Fuller run him. So I bought Speck off of Calvin, and he was a night champion with 4 wins on him when I bought him. And it wasn't long before English Days. So I went ahead and I got my 5th win on him. In fact, I went to a 2-night hunt, and I got a 5th and a 6th win on him. And then the following week, I thought, well, I'm going to run him one more time so I can get used to handling him in company. And I took him, and I put the 7th win on him, had 7 wins as a night champion. And so I took off to English Days, and I went up there to enter him, and I said, I'm going to run him as a grand night champion. Here's 7 win slips. And they said, let's get Fred Miller down here. So Fred came down there, and they talked it over, and he said, well, you can't run him as a grand night champion because he isn't recorded at UKC as a grand yet. And I said, well, I'll run him as a night champion. He said, well, you've already won 7 hunts. The dog's won 7 night champion hunts. And I said, then I'll run him as a registered dog. I'll run him anywhere you'll let me run him. But what I do know is when a guy comes to a UKC hunt with a UKC registered dog, there should be a place for him to hunt. So they talked it over, and they said, we're going to let you run him as a night champion because that's the way he's recorded with UKC. And I ran him over there at English Days and won it all with him. And Fred Miller called me Monday morning. He said, boy, don't run that dog no more till I get your Grand Night Champion papers down there. But Old Spec, he was just a dream come true for me. I ran the next year at the World Hunt. I won fifth place, I believe, at the '78 World Championship, and then, of course, I came back in '79 and won it with him and hung him up as far as competition. But he was a great competition dog and a great coon dog, but even more than that, he was a great reproducer, boy. I started breeding him. Didn't know if people would breed to him because he was a transferred walker dog. But and at first they didn't. But when those puppies started firing, they started lining up. And I had a foundation here to breed him to. I had a base already set up. I had the Ladybird and the Cash and the Joe, the John, and all that put together. The females that were standing here for him.